So what do these three lures have in common? Stick around to find out. Ready to run and gun? It's time for blast off. Let's go. Hey guys, Todd here with you. Welcome back to Bassin 101. Interesting topic today. Stop copying baits. Basically what that means is you have a lot of companies that try to copy other baits. They change them just a little bit here and there, say ours is better than what the original one is. Well, I'm sorry, the original was the one that started the whole entire thing, and that's the one I always use. I don't use another version of somebody's bait or anything because you originally had the design of that lure for a purpose, and that's what it does. Anybody else that wants to change the size a little bit here or there, or maybe change a couple of rings in it, or add a small little tail to it, or whatever they do, or maybe just shrink it a 1/4 inch or grow it a 1/4 inch or whatever, you're still copying what was already out there. I don't care if you're Berkeley, Zoom, Yum. I don't care who you are. I understand there's competition in the business, but stick to what you make that's original and just stick with it. The very first one I could think of off the top of my head that started the whole entire thing is a Mr. Twister Phenom. Now you're probably thinking, well, that wasn't the first worm. No, it wasn't. You had cream, then flip tail, then mans. This is the first worm to have action, the curl tail. And it's also the most copied shape of a worm ever. Every company has a little curl tail worm. But there's something about the shape of the twister worm that is unlike anything else. Now, of course, I boil mine so they get like super, super soft, but they still have a lot of meat in them. They're not going to tear apart. But that worm right there is the most copied and started every company making a worm that moved. It has some kind of curl tail, ribbon tail, whatever. Another good one that really brought ribbon tails on the market was the culprit, the 7.5 inch culprit. Around 84, 85, I think is when that thing come out. That started the whole ribbon tail craze. And everybody had to have a ribbon tail. I mean, even Mr. Twister, he even took their shot at ribbon tails. But there's something about that culprit, especially in red shad. But there's something about that culprit that you can't touch either. Another one that started major revolution around 89, 88, 89, it really took off around 1990, is the Sluggo. That dude right there has been copied by so many companies. And if you look at, go on old school fishing videos and look up the Stacy King Sluggo and soft plastic jerkbait video, on the deck of his boat, he's got all kinds of stuff out there that mimic that. Yeah, he does give props to the Sluggo. But this started the whole 90s revolution with the Zoom Super Flukes, the Man Shadow, it's Culper's Jerkworm. There's just a lot of stuff in there, and it all came from that. You also had the Top Gun, a lot of different things. But that definitely created a big revolution, and the last soft plastic to ever have a major impact on the industry, and has spawned so many copies. But there's just the original. Nobody could figure out how Gary does his deal. That's the Senko. Now, when this first come out, I hated this thing. Because I was fishing it wrong. This has got to be fished around cover. You can't throw this in open water, which was my mistake there was a farm pond I used to fish. That was my testing tank for everything. It's about an acre and a half maybe, and couldn't catch a cold on this thing. And I just went by the tackle store one day, back when we used to have tackle stores, and saw a pack of black and blue flake up there. I said, you know what, I'm going to give this one more shot. Bought a pack of black and blues, took them to the pond, wasn't catching nothing. I was like, man, this is junk. And saw a fish bowl against the bank in a bunch of grass. Threw right in there as soon as it hit the water. I was like, oh. So I started fishing the reeds. That evening at the pond, in about a 3-hour trip, I caught 35 bass. I was taking lighters, I was melting them things together. All I had was one pack, and I was burning through them quick. I was like, oh my gosh, best night I've ever had. So do you think I was sold on these things? Yep, and I also figured out, gotta have cover. Either grass, wood, rock, whatever. You gotta have some kind of cover to fish that in. But this has spawned, oh my gosh, so many copies. But there's the original, and it can't be touched. I mean, Yamamoto Senko is, as far as a stick bait, that's the original stick bait. Hundreds of thousands of copies of it, only one. And that's the original. When I use lures, I prefer to use the originals. Just for the simple fact that they started it, they perfected it, and everybody else just made copies of it. And I've always been that way. Always been that way. I mean, I've tried copies. I'll be honest with you, I've tried copies, but they just didn't do as good as the originals. I didn't catch them like the originals did. So there's got to be something to that. Of course, I've shown you how I modify the Sluggo. I don't do nothing with the Senko. I mean, that sucker right there alone. I mean, look at that. You don't want to bowl these, period. And of course, I always bowl, the Twister Phenoms. For years, that was my main worm. That's the only worm I ever threw. Because honestly, this is the only worm that won't twist your line. But you got so many companies that come out with copies of stuff, and just stick with the originals. I'm getting so tired of seeing, websites, and I start, looking at different baits that companies have or whatever. I just see copies of other baits all over the place. Like I said, I understand it's the business, it's the industry. You got to keep your head above water. But, companies have to get their start on something that impacts the industry. And unfortunately, 25 years later, nothing has impacted the industry like this, like the Senko. We never would have had any kind of flukes or anything if it wasn't for the Sluggo. And as far as curly tail type worms, ribbon tails, gator tails, stuff like that, that started it. That's just my 2 cents on the stuff. I just kind of want to throw that out there because I got to think about this the other day. I was like, you know what? I need to do a video about this. Because you don't hear anybody talk about it. And, me doing videos of things that nobody talks about, well, I never thought of nothing like that. Oops. So that's all I got for today, guys. Just 3 examples of baits that companies copy, but there's the originals and there's nobody else. Even companies that have a flagship lure, whether it impacted the industry huge or not, companies will still go and copy what theirs is. And then eventually the company drops their flagship bait. Why would you do that? That's what made you who you are. So I don't know. It just doesn't. I think sometimes too many pencil pushers run the company and don't actually do any fishing. They just see numbers, and that's a shame. That really is. That's a really bad shame. But that's my 2 cents there, guys. So until next time, may the Father bless you and keep you in Yeshua's name. And as always, fish on.